My wife wants a brick wall in a second floor bathroom. This episode is going to show you how I accomplish that. Welcome back to the show, everybody. We are on Brick Wall Day. And if you've watched any of the previous episodes and you've seen the intro video, you'll see what I'm talking about. But basically, when we started this project and my wife came and said, hey, why don't we paint the bathroom this weekend, which I thought was going to be a very easy paint job. You probably have seen some of those. But anyway, so when we decided to do this, she says, well, could I make one of the walls brick? There are several hurdles that you have to jump over in order to get a brick wall. Number one, you have to consider the cost. You have to consider the weight, and you have to consider the space that brick will take up. I figured right away that was going to be pretty impossible to get a full brick wall built in there because, if you think about it, imagine trying to put brick around an existing bathtub. It's going to overhang and stick over. That's not going to work. Putting brick behind the toilet won't be able to sit against the wall. You'd have to move the flange forward. And the weight involved in putting an entire 8-foot by 8-foot square of brick on a wall would be incredible and probably cause my floor joists to collapse. So actual real brick is out. The second option would be like a brick fascia. And I could have put a brick fascia in there, but again, I'm trying to do this bathroom on a budget. So brick fascia is definitely more expensive, and you buy that in a square foot. They sell them in packages, and the bricks are you can either buy individual bricks, which you have to mortar into place as a normal brick would, but they're only about this thick. There's also another option, which is almost like an imitation stone panel, which is about 2 foot by 1 foot or so, and that panel will interlock with another panel so it looks like perfectly no-seamed cohesive bricks across the entire wall. That was option number 2. And then option number 3 is the faux brick panel, which actually isn't brick at all. It's more like a very thin stamped piece of drywall. When we were making a decision on which one of those two we were going to choose, my wife, being the thrifty wife that she is, she says, I do not want to spend that much money on the individual planks of brick that weave themselves together. And she was much more apt to go towards the faux brick panel because she said, honestly, it's a bathroom that only I go into. I know it's not going to be actual brick anyway, no matter what you put in there. So I just want the look. So you know what? If we're going to be doing this on a budget, might as well go full on budget. And so we went with the faux brick panel. The faux brick panel was significantly cheaper than either of the other options. We were able to pick those up, I think, for $33 or so per panel, and you only need 2 of them for an 8-foot by 8-foot wall because each panel is 4 foot wide by 8 foot tall. Very convenient. Another very convenient thing about those panels is that they actually are made so that they match up. So when you put one side with the other, assuming that you are putting them on the right side and they're not turned upside down, okay, if they're going the right direction, you put them side by side, the half bricks match up to make one full brick, and then the 2 full bricks come together and make one little seam of what would appear to be fake mortar. So they match up very nicely, and that was definitely a plus with that because I didn't want to have to worry about having to make some kind of creative, sculpting with, spackle or whatever, joint compound, and then gray paint or something like that. So it was nice that they fit together. But this episode is going to be showing you basically how we got them on the wall. And when we come back, I'll give you just a quick few-minute rundown on some of the challenges we had in installing the panels. Okay, welcome back. This is today's update. I got the first sheet of brick installed. I used minimal fasteners for this. I put them in places because when you put the fastener in the wall, all right, it does make a little bit of a brown spot from the compressed fiberboard underlayment. We're going to touch that up with gray paint so it'll be invisible. But I put them in strategic places because, for instance, right here, you can see I have a couple of holes already made here. This is going to be a cabinet, so this will actually be behind a cabinet. Over here, you'll see I also have some down here. Those are also going to be hidden behind the cabinetries, so you won't even see those. The only ones that are visible are going to be at the very top, and I will be touching those up with gray paint and a little bit of creative spackling. But I did get it affixed to the wall. It appears to be holding up nicely. There isn't a lot of bows or anything in it, so that's quite nice. I also installed our new light, and I'm sorry that that's probably very overexposed, but we got the light installed. That was a pretty simple process. We didn't go with the super expensive light, but it does happen to match the theme that the wife wants. So we're going to stick with that for now. Basically, what I'm working on now is the second piece that goes around the shower and bathtub. And I'm going to show you kind of what I was doing here so you can see, like, if you ever want to install any kind of decorative faux paneling around a shower stall, this is the way I'm going to do it. And if you see this video, that means I was successful. If I was unsuccessful in my attempt, then you probably will never even see this published. But basically the way I'm doing it is I measured the first piece to be basically a 4x8 sheet because we have 8-foot ceilings up here. I had to trim off the bottom just a touch because with the various layers of flooring, it's not a full 8 foot anymore. I was actually a half an inch short. So I shaved off a half inch across the bottom of this panel. I cut out an opening for all of the pipe work that is going to be behind the cabinetry. I didn't get too creative with that because, hey, I mean, I could have, pulled all that stuff off and then just had small little holes, but no one's ever going to see that. It's always going to be buried behind the cabinet, so I'm not going to worry about it too much. I also cut a hole here for the cabinet to be installed. I measured where that was going to be, and I just drilled a half-inch hole. And then over here with the light behind that light, I drilled about 1.5 inch hole that went right over the wiring box that's in the wall. And I pulled the wire through, and then I just installed the light on the other side. I had to get the light installed because I had a work light in here that was a halogen. And that halogen work light, I know I need to upgrade to LED, but I don't. I mean, I'm just spending money on stuff I have to right now. So basically what's going on is I had this halogen light set up over here, and that halogen light puts off an incredible amount of heat. I was sweating within 5-10 minutes of being in the room. So I had to get that new light fixture installed early. I usually don't do that until a little bit later because, I don't want it to get dusty or messed up or get bumped by a piece of wood or something like that. But I got that in. It's not that expensive, so even if I do damage it, I can always replace it again. So basically, I didn't put any kind of lock. All right, so as you can see from that video, the first piece went up pretty much without a hitch. I was very fortunate in that the panel lined up very nicely. I did have to make that small little cut at the bottom. I think I removed about 5/8 of an inch off the bottom of that panel in order to get it to fit. And the reason that is because there are several layers of flooring and subflooring there, which that has to sit on top of. So it isn't a full 8 feet anymore. It's actually, 7 foot 11 and whatever 3/8 inches, and that's fine. We're not 8 foot tall anyway to be bumping our heads on a ceiling, so it's not a big deal. But I did have to cut off that little bottom 5/8, and The corner was basically level straight up. I mean, there might be a small little eighth to maybe an eighth inch or so gap in certain places in the corner, but that's easily correctable with a little bit of caulk, which I will apply to the edges, and you'll see that in the final video where I give the run through of the completed project. The top, the factory edges on the panel are very nicely set at 90 degrees and they're very straight. So with the top, I didn't have to trim any of that off, and it basically just went right up to the ceiling, with the exception of, again, maybe about an eighth of an inch or so from the ceiling. The bottom, it was just about on the floor, but that's okay. I lifted it just a little bit, and the application process can go two different ways. If you're thinking about putting a faux brick panel in, you have two different options for getting them on the wall. Number one, and this is the more permanent route, is to use liquid nails or some sort of heavy-duty construction adhesive. You can buy that in the hardware store. It comes in a tube, and basically it squirts on rather like caulk. You use a caulk gun to apply it, and you just put it all over the wall, put it all over the back of that panel, and then you just kind of, squish it on there, and that stuff pretty much holds tight. But I didn't want to use that adhesive because as I said, that's more of a permanent option for you. When you go to remove that brick panel, if you decide later, a couple years down the road, I don't want brick anymore, maybe I want stone, or maybe I want to take that stone out all the way and put those more high quality upper grade, interlocking tiles in. Maybe I want to take that out and put, nice marble tile walls on there. You're going to be tearing that drywall out in order to get the brick wall off, because those tubes of construction adhesive, the heavy duty construction adhesive, liquid nails kind of thing, they are so powerful, they are so strong, they do not want to come off your walls. So in the process of removing them, you will tear, at the minimum, you will tear the paper on the front of the drywall and expose the grit underneath. And that's the minimum. When you're scraping and chipping and trying to get that stuff off, you'll probably gouge your walls pretty good too. So the process of removal, if you use the construction adhesive, is a lot more labor intensive, and you're probably end up having to replace some drywall over that. So the second option, which was the one I went with, was to use 3 or 3.5 inch. I think I used 3.5 inch construction screws. And the downside to using the construction screws is that you have to get them into a stud. So I had to measure each of my stud locations and put a small mark on the ceiling where the studs were, so it could translate straight down and I could get screws into the studs. The studs are not always exactly at your 16-inch center. In most construction, they're supposed to be 16-inch center, but over time they warp, they bow, and you end up missing a stud now and then, and that is always a pain in the butt to have to rectify. But for the most part, you have to measure your stud placement. Make sure you have a little note so that you can find those studs later to drive the screws in, so you're putting it into something solid. There were a couple instances where I missed a stud and it did not turn out well for me, because then you have to kind of drill to find a stud, and then you have holes. It's kind of a mess. So you'll see that in the final video as well. I'll point out some of the mistakes I made. I'm not going to try to hide all my mistakes. I want you guys to see all the things that I did wrong as well. So when you see the final walkthrough, I'm going to point out each one of the mistakes that I made, and I'm going to show you how much I kicked myself in the butt for making them. So anyway, I used the construction screws, 3.5 inch screws, and they went into the studs as much as I could possibly get them in there. I tried to place the screws in places that were more strategic, so that once the final, like the mirror was up and the vanity was in and the medicine cabinet, not the medicine cabinet, but that wall cabinet behind the toilet was in, that would hide those screws, and the toilet would hide the screws. So there were minimal screws showing, where when you walk into the bathroom, you may only see 2 or 3. And that's what I was going for. And then in order to cover those, what I did is I used a small amount of gray paint. You could probably even use fingernail polish or something like that. And that really made them a lot less noticeable. If they bother me over time and I keep looking at them and I don't like them, I can probably try to rig up a little bit of joint compound and make a little bit of faux brick topping for them, and then just kind of paint over that with a little bit of gray paint so they're less visible. But that's something that my wife does not care about. I asked her and she says, I don't care if I see 2 or 3 screws. It's not a big deal. So there you have it. I mean, those panels went up very well. The second panel, when it went up, I was going to show you a video of the entire wall when it was finished at the end of this video. I'm just going to save it for the walkthrough at the end because we're really nearing the end here. All I have to do is just install everything now. And that second panel went on very well. I did use a dime technique that I mentioned in the video to make the radius around the corner of the shower. And the panel did have to be modified just a little bit because where the 2 panels met up, I was very fortunate to have a straight 90 degree. It was very level when I installed the first piece. It was very level originally. But the second piece, when I installed it, it kept getting caught a little bit on the other edge of the wall because the 2 walls are not exactly parallel. They're just a little bit cockeyed. So the other wall kind of caught a little bit. So I had to take it down and then trim it a little and then take it down and trim it a little. But that's what you have to do when you're trying to fit something in there, And the little area down by the toilet, I was able to chop off a little arc on that and get that installed. In the baseboard, it's going to go right underneath it there, no problem. So it really went very easy for that as well. I hope it lasts. I am concerned about the moisture in the bathroom affecting those brick panels because they are not brick, because they are actually like a fiberboard with a little bit of, I don't know what you'd call it. It's almost like a drywall, I'm concerned that the moisture in the bathroom might cause them to swell or expand or something. I don't know, or get soft. And if they do, I can just undo the screws and pull them right down. They're not liquid nails in, so it's not a big deal, But one of the most headache-inducing parts of that part of the project, I'm going to let you know, it wasn't actually, hiding the screws or cutting the arcs or any of that. That stuff went pretty smooth. But the biggest part was actually getting 4x8 sheets of this brick into that tiny little bathroom. We had to go around 180 degrees around a banister of a staircase, walk it up the stairs and get it vertical. Then we had to lay it down, and then we had to walk it down a hallway which was not 4 feet wide, so you can't flip it. And then once we realized, we should have brought it up the other direction, we had to take it into one of the bedrooms and do one of those 180 degree spins, because the bedroom is the only area on the second floor large enough to hold an entire sheet like that. And then once we spun it around and we flipped it over, then we were able to walk it right into the bathroom, and then a little bit of bending to get around the door, and then it was boop, up on the wall it went. But that was a little bit of a challenge, trying to figure out the logistics of getting these large panels into that small space. So keep that in mind if you're ever putting in drywall, or if you're ever putting up paneling, or if you ever want to put up a faux brick wall. That's something you're going to have to consider. Give it some serious thought before you start walking, because once you have that panel in hand, you are committed to the trip. So you do not want to get halfway up the stairs and then realize, oh my goodness, I can't get around this corner. Or, oh my goodness, I should have had the panel the other way so that it slides into the bathroom easier. That's what happened to us, and we had to do 180 degrees over the top of our bed. But anyway, that's how that went. And we got those in there finally. We had to weasel them around corners and things to get them in so that they didn't snap. And you don't want to bend them too much because they could, potentially crack, snap, and then you'd have a mess. And you have to go and buy a new one. But we got them in there and we got them installed. The screws are holding tight after a couple of days, and I'm going to get that caulk on there and get everything else installed, and then we're going to have that final walkthrough so you can see what the bathroom looks like. And I'm also going to give you a rundown on the final cost of everything. So if you decide to tackle a job like this, you're going to know exactly what we paid, so you'll have a better idea of what you might be paying for your project. Anyway, I really am so happy that you joined us today, and I'm so glad you stuck around to the end. And please, if you could, give me a thumbs up, subscribe if you haven't already, and check out some of my other videos. And I hope you have a wonderful day. God bless you.